All right, good morning and welcome to our channel. Today, I'd like to discuss an update to the previous administration's warning in terms of housing authorities and HUD, and they have updated their rules about immigration and those that may be present that may not be legal in the country. So, they ran an audit U.S. wide since January, and they have at this point discovered roughly 200,000 individuals that currently preside in one form or another in Section 8 housing. And so that includes many of the different forms of federal housing, not just a Section 8 voucher. Of that, they've got another reported 25,000 that they've got a match on that are considered to be legally dead or not alive. And so we may be seeing a very large spike in terms of eviction notice for and termination for Section 8 vouchers for participants that may not otherwise be legally here in the country or are available to use Section 8 programs. They've also got a red flag on at least 6,000. So let me go over a little bit of the information that we're kind of getting out of HUD right now. And again, this was on order of President Trump's orders back in January. And now they have run these audits and they've notified housing authorities of compliance. In other words, they're going to have to make a definitive decisions because if the PHA or public housing authorities around the nation continue to operate as such, where we're characterizing hundreds of thousands of people utilizing a system they have no right to, then eventually there'll be federal intervention from the government shutting down, closing, or otherwise putting these housing authorities in receivership. 200,000 people is a pretty extraordinary number, though it's not been totally verified. These have been flagged. But what's more striking, again, is the 25,000 people that are not even alive. We don't know if those identities were stolen or if these people were actually dead, but we do know they're participating, I guess, from the coffin in the program. And another 6,000 have extreme warnings on and alerts on their accounts as being a complete fraud. So I think we got to establish 6,000. Of course, that would be good news in terms of many people that participate in the program that are US citizens, because if you evacuate 200,000 people out of the system and then put through immigration, then clearly this is going to reduce waiting lists and free up hundreds of thousands of vouchers potentially. Okay. So let me bring in some notes here, guys, and I'm going to put these notes down here in the comments section as well as the description. And I encourage you to verify that information directly through the U.S. government, through the federal agency HUD and other primary.gov websites, so you can arrive at your own conclusion and decision. And of course, my channel would love to hear from you regarding this matter, whether it's religious, political, or otherwise, but do keep it civil, okay? Um, so in the notations here, the right now HUD's doing an immigration eligibility enforcement, and so they did the audit as I mentioned earlier in January. So HUD has ordered the housing authority to verify immigration eligibility and correct questionable tenant records. However, the statement HUD ordered the housing authorities to remove all ineligible immigrants. Somewhat it's oversimplified. So HUD has a legal requirement at this point to get public housing authorities, better known as PHAs, to comply. So what was actually ordered? Well, on January 23rd, 2026, HUD announced that the public housing authorities and participating property owners had 30 days to review immigration eligible discrepancies identified through HUD and DHS data comparison and begin appropriate corrective action. Now, here we are approximately about a half year later. And so HUD is reporting clearly that nearly 200,000 tenants whose eligibility requirements require additional verification. 25,000 people are serving as deceased that are using vouchers, and another 6,000 tenants identified as potentially ineligible non-citizens with red flags. More importantly, it's appearing on HUD's report, and a discrepancy doesn't always establish that the person is eligible. That HUD's instruction expressly say that some records require additional documentation, as in the save system verification or correction of inaccurate HUD 558 information system. And so HUD's 23, I guess HUD's 20 January 23rd announcement, they're going to be running everybody through HUD's EIB save instruction system and its process to determine outcomes of who's actually supposed to have this and who shouldn't. What housing authorities must do. So this is an order not only by the president, but also by a federal agency. Again, if the housing authority is not going to comply, then they should expect that there will be federal intervention and they will be put in receivership. And then likely those that work there will be terminated until they can figure out another company that can run their housing authority if they're not going to comply with these rules. So it's not a request. Housing authorities are required to review EIB, SAVE, which is a tenant matching report, compare HUD's 558 information with the tenant file, seek primary and also necessary secondary verification through DHS, the SAVE system, correct inaccurate citizenship and eligibility and immigration codes, preserve documentation and the eligibility determination, provide written notice before denying or terminating assistance, which right now that's what's going to be happening. As they further move into looking at eligibility and records, they're going to start terminating a lot of these people that cannot be verified, allowing applicable verification, appeal, and informal hearing procedures. So as you're given a notice to terminate, you may appeal. If you fail to do so within the recommended time, then that's the end of it. You obviously will receive a permanent ban from this because you're no longer going to be eligible in any way if you ever were to start with. Housing authorities that disregard the verification requirements can face corrective orders, disallowing costs, repayment requirements, and reductions in HUD funding. In other words, the federal government will cut the housing authority off completely. They will shut off the funding. They'll shut off the government ATM, and they will put them in receivership, so they will go bankrupt. So you either comply or die. So this is a very direct order that if you cannot verify or produce that information, they will simply cut it off, and then you will cease to exist as a public housing authority. The 30-day deadline does not mean the 30 days to eviction, okay, just to be clear. This is a critical distinction. So the 30-day HUD deadline applied primarily to housing authorities review and discrepancy report in the initiation of the corrective action. It did not authorize PHAs to immediately evict every flagged tenant within 30 days. So that's the process we've been going over for about a half a year. That process is coming to a conclusion. Under the regulations currently in force, assistance generally cannot be terminated while a timely submitted immigration documents are being verified. Secondary verification may be required, and families must receive written notice explaining the proposed action against them. Tenants may request an informal hearing. Assistance generally cannot be terminated until the applicable hearing process is completed, which again, all that happens in around 10 to 14 days from notice. Okay. State landlord law and jurisdiction eviction procedures may still apply when actual removal from the unit is sought, which generally happens within a 3-day notice to vacate. These protections appear in Title 24 CFR 5.514, which I will post a link. And again, notations and links to all the information here in both the comment section as well as the description. Mixed status families are the major unresolved issue here. So mixed status families contains at least one eligible citizen and or eligible non-citizen and at least one person who is not eligible for HUD assistance. To be clear, neither the president as well as HUD no longer want to have anybody that is legally has a right to a voucher, having anybody exist or stay in the home that is not legally here in the country. Therefore, they either come in compliance, and the persons that are not legally here exit the federally funded unit, or everybody face termination. So the mixed status family contains at least one eligible, as I mentioned. So under the regulations current in effect, eligible mixed status households generally must be offered prorated assistance. In other words, until they make a final decision, they will downgrade the amount of rent they're going to pay. So if you've got one legal person with a voucher and you've got 5 people that are not present legally in the US, then your voucher will go down by a magnitude in order of those 5 people. So you may find it may be rather unsustainable to continue to rent, and then that would be a forced eviction because the PHA is no longer going to grant additional rents or monies on any additional household members that are not legally here or present in the U.S. Under current regulations, specifically state the PHA and owner must offer the prorated assistance. You can find that information on Title 24, and that will be 5.506 and 5.516. And I will post that link as well. HUD's proposed stricter rule on February 2026. HUD published a proposed rule that would significantly change the current mixed family policy. It would require proof of citizenship or eligibility immigration status from every family member, regardless of age. So from birth to death. Eliminate the option for a household member to decline to claim eligible status while remaining while remaining and acknowledging ineligible members. In other words, it used to be an option. You didn't have to select on the application. You didn't have to acknowledge whether you were legally here or not. They're now forcing housing authorities to remove that, and you have to check the box, and if they can't verify you, then that's it. You're simply not going to receive any benefit at the federal level for taxpayer dollars in order to subsidize your rent. Limit the prorated assistance primarily to the temporary periods while verification or due process remains pending. Potentially force a mixed status family to remove the ineligible household member or lose HUD assistance after applicable procedures are completed. Let this be a cautionary tale. If you have people that are not legally present in the U.S. and they're residing in your home, they will need to move, or otherwise everybody there will lose both the tenant and the use of that voucher or otherwise federally subsidized housing. And also, they mentioned that requiring certain mixed family members to provide documentation with a limit of 90 days. If you don't provide it within the 90 days, then you're out. Okay. The public comment period ended April 21st of 2026, and as of August 5th, these measures remain identified in available federal materials as a proposed rule. It has not been finalized in some parts, but I'm going to link up the HUD proposal rule, and they should be voting on that in the next 60 days. So, who may still qualify? Well, you can qualify to be a U.S. citizen. I think that's very clear. And again, I'm going to post everything for you guys. But as of present, those that may still qualify are U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, refugees that have a legal granted status, people granted asylum, people granted withholding or removal, certain parolees, and certain victims of trafficking, and other specifically protected immigration classes. I should also mention this list that I just mentioned, and many of them will likely be removed, as you've noticed just yesterday on many of the major news outlets, that they're removing protections for many classes of people from different nations. I believe they were discussing removing several 100,000 Haitians that have been residing in the U.S. on a protected status. So I believe it's the mission of the administration at this point to remove most of these protected status and then have people revisit their home country, as the issue may not be prevalent anymore as a problem. But again, I'm not an immigration expert. So moving on there, what programs will be effective? Well, the public housing choice vouchers, project-based vouchers, Section 8 project-based rental assistance, Section 8 moderate rehabilitation, and certain older Section 235, 236, Section 811, Section 202. So virtually every federal program that offers tax dollars in lieu of federal housing or a Section 8 voucher will be affected. So bottom line, guys, you probably got about 60 days before they start implementing the audits. And that also goes for the Public Housing Authority. Failure to cooperate with the U.S. government will result in your housing authority getting cut off, and then ultimately you'll be insolvent because you simply will not be able to operate legally anymore. Frankly, I worked at federal level 26 years helping clients Section 8, and I've argued many cases for many clients, never those that are illegally here. But I will say this needs to happen. There are 200,000 people operating inside of a system that was designed for Americans, is horrible. 25,000 people using fake or other identities in order to steal federal funds to get in housing. That's a big problem. And 6,000 with extreme red flags would tell me that we're losing vast amounts of money, and it's simply not serving the American public. It appears to be a daycare center for worldwide nationals to jump in to utilize. And so we need to close this out because it's actually creating a bigger problem in sustainability. That's why seniors, veterans, and disabled here in the U.S. can't get housing because they're on a 10, 20-year waiting list, when in fact we were housing 100, 200,000 people that don't even have a legal right to be here. Another 25,000 use stolen or otherwise identities that are legally dead. How do we end up with 25,000 people that are residing in a coffin, but yet the government's paying for that? So that's what this audit's about. And there's going to be very serious consequences for housing authorities that participate in the charade. It's one of the longest running frauds in US history, in my opinion, to allow the equivalent of a mid-sized city of people to simply preside in there that have no legal right to be here and otherwise, and then simply rob the taxpayer of money in the use of this. And then, of course, it's rather alarming to learn that we have 25,000 people that we willfully and know are dead, but yet they're receiving a voucher. I would love to know how grandma is in the graveyard, but yet still receiving a voucher. So we have a very serious problem of fraud here, and I think that's partially because inappropriate conduct. Having housing authorities put on there that you don't even need to select whether you're a citizen is nuts. How are we going to sit here and ask the American taxpayer to continue to foot a bill, but then allow anybody, whether they're legally here or not, to not even have to check the box that is somehow some kind of option, or to have one legal citizen and then fill the house with people that aren't legally here, and then have us put that bill? And so I speak respectfully to the American public, but honestly, this needs to be for people that are Americans that are here legally to pay in the tax base. It should not ever be used to funnel money, federal funds, and people's contributions to this as taxpayers to hundreds of thousands of people that simply don't even that are not legally here. So that is the argument at play. Um, I ask you again, guys, to keep the commentary respectful, argue the point, not each other, and keep the decorum in the chat in the comments. Respectful, okay? I don't want to have to put anybody out, but I understand we all have strong arguments, feelings, both politically, religiously, and otherwise. But the thing is, we need to remain with a little bit of respect in this channel if you're going to remain in the commentary. So I'm gonna move on to comments, and then I'm going to close out the video. But after this video, live video ends, I'm going to post everything. And again, I encourage you to look at the data yourself from HUD, look federal agencies, and verify it, and then draw your own conclusions. You don't need to reach my conclusion; just reach the conclusion of looking at what the data says, and then you determine what you believe is going wrong with this. All right. Good morning, Sheila Neal, Hillbilly Hermit. Good morning. Let's see. Tangson says good morning. Joseph. Good morning. Um, Wyatt says this is great because cartels have taken over HUD housing authorities. I understand the sentiment because many people view housing authorities as running like a syndicate. I've dealt with many of them over the years through my career, and they're not often that well run and properly managed. There's a lot of misconduct. I know we published over 100 videos where housing authorities were, you had employees and even directors steal funds and created a number of problems of fraud. And some of the largest housing authorities in America this year have been seized by the feds. Employee up to 90 employees in New York. They just went after LA for this. And so it's not with great authority a lot of these agencies operate, but there are some good, but we have a serious problem. 200,000 is just staggering. Moving on from there, Raymond Banks, good morning, sir. Good morning to you. Wendy, you agree? I appreciate that. New York is ridiculous about that. Thank you, Deborah. Betty Skyberg, good morning to you as well. Doll Baby says good morning. Joyce Brown, good morning to you. And Charity Man, good morning and welcome back. PYTU, why they ask if five? I'm not quite sure what you're meaning in that context. Charity Man, have a great day, rest of your day. Well, thank you very much. Well, we had it looks like we got a low commentary now. I'm sure this will be rather explosive like most of my videos, but we're not speaking in shock and awe here. I think we were all aware that things weren't operating properly. And when put under the force of law, the housing authorities simply have failed magnificently in their 50-year venture to provide housing when we simply allow anybody that walks across a border, through the ocean, on a boat, or through a river. The thing of it is, we can't have dead people and 200,000 nationals that don't even have a driver's license or right to be here. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. It's ridiculous. And so for many of you that are Americans that paid in the tax base, maybe you're retired, you're on a fixed income, and maybe you need to utilize the system. Well, here's why that waiting list is so long. And I have a feeling these numbers are much larger than what's being published, even by Congress. I have a feeling these numbers can reach, up to a million, and so, but I find it so highly ironic that 25,000 people, stolen identities and dead people. These people that have participated in the program, that 25,000, they need to be arrested and they need to be charged in a federal court. And every nickel that was stolen from that system needs to be recovered. Okay. That is absolute fraud at its finest, and it's a massive portion. This has become the scandal of the century in terms of taxpayers paying money into something that's being operated unprofessionally and with little regard. And so I believe the administration has taken this on head first. Uh, Mr. Scott over there at HUD, that's now the director of HUD, they're doing their investigations, and before long, there's going to be a mass wave of terminations, and you've got 10 to 14 days to prove your case. If you fail that informal hearing, that's it. And then they may, because they're running this through DHS, you may find that right after your informal hearing, that there could be a deportation order. The administration was very clear. They want it to be a whole solution. So they're probably not going to stop at just a termination of services. They're probably going to send follow up in order to have removals. And so this will be another coordinated action by the federal government to remove another 200,000 people that simply should not be here. Okay. As I've always said, America is not a soup kitchen. We have our own to care for. If you want to be here, then you need to do what's necessary in order to become a citizen like everybody else. Let me tell you something else. If Americans went and invaded China, do you not think they would not throw our ass in prison? You think you're just going to go over there and get on the welfare system and think that's going to be all right? And then you stolen identities and dead people? You think people in China going to fuck around with that? We're the only country I know of that allows people to do this without serious consequence. Well, there are now serious consequences. And so, we have to do better as a nation. And, when it comes to federal agencies, I've said this for quite a while, probably over 2 decades, that we need a stronger oversight of public housing authorities. There's a conflict of interest. They are not nonprofit. And this goes to show they're not able to manage the task. Maybe this should be put at the state or federal level at this point because we're losing billions of dollars. That's what I have to say about it, guys. I've enjoyed talking with you. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm going to do a pre-record and then we'll have another live video. And I will continue to bring these contentious subject matters until the matter's been resolved. But I, like every other American, work. I pay taxes, and when I pay them, I'm not going to pay for people that are going to be here that are not legally here legally. That's just how it goes. And so that thought, guys, I've enjoyed having you and enjoy your day. Okay. Bye for now. If I can find the off button, right?